Oops, you're muted. Let me see if I can fix that.
Okay, I fixed it, I think.
Yeah,
Are we good now?
You're good.
Okay. All right, guys. So we're good, right? I'm recording. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. And I am a member of Authors on Call. I'm a writer and an illustrator, meaning I both write the children's books and illustrate them. And I do nonfiction. Today, I'm going to talk briefly about a book I did on art, and then we're going to go more deeper into things, and I'm going to talk to you about particular artists and kind of show you a lot of art, so get ready. Okay, so first I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and we're going to go to, can you see that okay? Everybody see that? So nope. Art and, you nope. Can't see it. Oh, nope. Okay. All right. So we escape. And how about this? Can you see this?
No, Roxie, you got to share screen and then pick the application you're using.
Okay, Keynote. Right. I got you. Share.
There we go.
How's that? Okay. So great, guys. All right. So this is going to be an art talk based upon my book, Masterpiece Mix. And all the paintings in this book are from the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. The name of the book is Masterpiece Mix. So the story is that an artist, I think she looks a little like me, is going to the studio, and today she's going to make a new painting. Now I want you to note, for instance, the awning and see this location because you're going to see it again maybe. So in the studio, first you build the stretcher for the oil painting. Then you stretch the canvas on it and you put a white surface gesso on it. Then you get out your tools. In my case, these are oil paints with turpentine, brushes, sketch paper, palette knives. But the question is, what do you paint? I mean, it's really hard to be inspired in a way. So this artist has spent a lot of time looking at her favorite paintings, like still lifes. So in her studio, you'll see she's tacked up still lifes from her favorite paintings, her favorite museums. Still lifes are, it sounds dumb, but they're objects that don't move. So flowers, could be a lamp, it could be pencils, it could be anything that people are interested in painting. Then you have landscapes. I actually do cityscapes, which are the same principle as landscapes. A lot of people love to do landscapes, what's out of their window, when they travel. Many artists do portraits. Portraits are pictures of people. You can also have self-portraits, which are pictures of you. Many artists do self-portraits. Here we have portraits of a series of hats. We have some self-portraits on the left. And many artists do, you can paint whatever you want. They do animals. So here are some famous paintings of animals. Then you have figure drawings. They are studies of the human body. They're usually in pencil. They're not always painted. And that's so you can learn to draw better. You can get the proportion of heads and figures and that sort of thing. And then some people like to paint cultural things, music, dance, literature. You can even paint sports. You see the painting in the middle, a famous boxing painting. So this artist is like, what should I paint? I love all these things. You can see she's standing before her window. My father really said this, people. He said, do what you really love. So what does this artist love? She loves her town. Remember, she was passing by that awning, and this is the view out of the window. But she also loves art. And in this painting that she painted, 37 paintings, all those paintings we just looked at, she managed to incorporate. So this involves what she loves and her neighborhood, and then also history. So you see in the lower left, the gym. Advertising the gym is the painting of the boxing. The two self-portraits are below that. In the upper right, you'll see George Washington High School. You'll see the dancer in the lower right. So all these paintings are hidden in this painting, and in the book, you find them all, and this is the key in the back, but you don't go to this first. And then there's much more information on the different artists in the book. So now let's learn about some of those artists. One of my favorite artists is Vincent Van Gogh. Here's a self-portrait of his. He did at least 43 self-portraits. And you'll notice there's a white patch on his face. That's because Van Gogh got depressed one day or over a period of time, and he kind of cut off part of his ear, and then he did a portrait of himself like that. But I love, when he was feeling better, and he does very strong paintings, as you see, with bold brushstrokes, and it looks just like he really looked, but it's still a kind of exaggerated artistic portrait of him. He also did, again, these flowers. Again, see how dynamic they are and the beautiful brushstrokes. These two paintings on the left here were paintings he did just before, I'm sad to say, he killed himself at the age of 37. He was so depressed. But my favorite painting of all is the one on the lower right of his bedroom. And you can tell that he did that just standing there in the bedroom. You can tell he didn't do it from a photograph. He did it live. And I like that because it has what I call the participatory space, the space you're in as well as the space you're looking at. Now, Winslow Homer was a great artist. When I was a child, I lived in Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay, and we had, not this painting because we can't afford that painting, it's a famous painting, but we had a print of this exact painting up on our wall throughout my childhood. So this guy, Winslow Homer, also, by the way, did, I believe, was 13 different children's books, but he also did paintings. On the lower left here, you'll see a very exotic painting of his that he did. I mean, it just tells a story. What happened to this guy? And you guys can make up your own story for it. Why is his mast broken? Look at those sharks. So these paintings tell a story. Now, on the right side, you'll see two paintings and say, wait a minute, that's the same painting. But it's not. Sometimes artists paint something over and over till they get it right. So here you can see he changed the background from the hills to a flatter background. And you say, well, all the figures are the same, but they actually aren't. You'll see on the left, there are two figures in the top one and only one guy falling down in the bottom one. We'll see that theme again, doing a second or third painting to make it better. Paul Cezanne was also a very famous French artist. He was what they call an impressionist. He liked to paint kind of still lifes with blocks of color. He was kind of a cubist. His parents did not want him to be an artist, but he wanted to be one, and he went along and became one of the most famous artists ever. So sometimes you don't listen to your parents. Robert Duncanson was one of the few African-American artists, very, very beautiful work he did, that was collected by museums before, say, 1900. So he loved what we call the Hudson River School, which did these big, magnificent landscapes. And he was a wonderful artist and did these gorgeous kind of North American landscapes, some with kind of fantasy in them. Mary Cassatt was a woman, as you can see, and in the times that she grew up in the late 1880s, women were not supposed to be artists. Her parents did not want her to be an artist, but she defied them. She lived in Philadelphia, and they wouldn't let her go to the art school because they had nude models there, and she was trying to learn to paint the figure. So she went to France. She went to France, as I say. She never got married, but she loved to paint figures, people, and you see this is a beautiful pastel, by the way, not an oil painting. And then kind of pastoral scenes with families in them, even though she herself never had a family. Now, John Constable was an English artist who was famous for his clouds. So he did these magnificent clouds. He would put his easel up and just paint in real life. In those days, there was no photography, and he would paint these magnificent landscapes, kind of like Duncanson. Rembrandt was a Dutch artist who was renowned for the way he used light. So you see how the light is hitting one side of his face. This is a self-portrait. Here he is. This is just a kind of a ink drawing, but it shows the darks and the lights to create the form. Here are some very famous paintings he did. Again, if you squint your eyes, you'll see how the light is coming from one side. And these were all done live. Again, they didn't have photography then. Oh, one of my very favorites, Daumier. He was a Frenchman. He painted, first of all, he was a painter, a sculptor. He did thousands of pieces of work. And these are some little sculptures he did of political people. Now, can you imagine some of our politicians being treated like this in art? In fact, he actually was sued once for drawing someone. And by the way, he was a draftsman, but he was sued once and actually went to jail because for a brief time, because he made fun of a politician. So he was a draftsman. Being a draftsman means that you mainly work in black and white and you can draw with the line very, very well. So he didn't paint much. But the sad thing is, as he lived a long time and as he got older, this great draftsman became blind. Now, Gilbert Stuart is a famous American artist, and these are portraits of, this is a portrait of him, but he did portraits. He did the famous George Washington portraits. He also painted a lot of famous, and there are two more portraits he did of George Washington. He did many of George Washington, and also society ladies and famous people and people not so famous. Claude Monet was a Frenchman who, remember I told you that some people got obsessed by, well, I haven't mentioned that yet. I said they repeat, they try to do the painting better and better. This guy, for example, loved his lily pad paintings. He painted 250 paintings of this lily pond. And he loved it so much that he would go out in the morning before he was going to paint, and he would kind of dust off the dust and the mold and the stuff from the top of the water so the reflections could be seen better. He was obsessed again by light. So you could see that these are haystacks, which he did over and over again in all kinds of light. And you guys should appreciate the fact that light changes everything. Even while I'm sitting here, I have a skylight in my studio, and the light in this room will change. And he was also obsessed, again, here's light, and this is the cathedral. He did many, many paintings of this cathedral. Paul Gauguin was a stockbroker and a banker, and he hated being a banker. He wanted to be an artist. So he quit his job in Paris and he went down to Arles, where Van Gogh lived. They were buddies, the first guy who cut off his ear. And he started painting. There's one of his self-portraits. Here's another one. And again, your self-portraits do not have to look like you, but they have to kind of feel like you. And then he went all the way to the French Polynesia, to the Marquesas Islands, and he was famous for doing very broad, bold, strong colored paintings. Now, Vermeer was a wonderful Dutch artist. It took him a long, this is a very small painting. It's only a few inches. But if you squint your eyes, you'll see how the light, just like the artist who was working before I came on, talked about how the light will hit one side. The light is hitting one side of her face. And then you see little touches of light illuminating it. If you squint your eyes, you'll just see how strong that is. And that creates a sense of volume. Here he is again with a different painting. And again, see where the light hits it. And here, all these paintings are dealing with how light hits the art. He did very few paintings. He died at 44 years old. He left his wife and 12 children, and 11 children. They were very poor, and now his paintings are almost the most expensive paintings in the whole world. Frans Hals was a Dutch painter, and he was kind of fun because look, you know, he had kind of a sense of humor. He did portraits. And look at these guys. They're all kind of merry and having a good time. So he was very, very good for getting character and doing kind of what we call loose lively paintings. Now, George Stubbs, some of you guys might like what he does. He was famous for his animal paintings. This is a huge painting, I think it's like 5 feet, of a dog, but he was particularly famous for his horse paintings and for his, up in the upper right, you'll see kind of a hunting painting. And he studied the anatomy and he actually did books on horses. Edgar Degas was a French painter who also loved horses. So he did these great race horse paintings, and you can see he also did sculptures. And you see how the painting in the upper left and the lower right are kind of similar in a way. The same guy is leaning over his horse. Again, this is the artist working and working and working until he gets exactly what he wants, and he gets it better. Now, the other thing that Degas loved madly was ballet. And this is a famous painting called, the little girl's 14 years old, called The Young Dancer. She has it took him years to make this. She has real hair pasted on, and then her outfit is really made out of real fabric. But again, he was obsessed by ballet, and here he went behind the scenes and behind the stages and did these wonderful motion, lively, beautiful paintings. Now, Henri Rousseau was an interesting guy. He was what they call a customs inspector, which is kind of like the guy when you come in from the airport that checks to see what you have in your luggage. He lived in Paris. He never left France. He never went out of the country once. He had this boring job, but he had an unbelievable imagination. He never went to Africa, but he did these wonderful paintings of very fanciful, kind of flat, graphic-y, patterned landscapes, almost like children's book art in a way. And he had this vivid imagination, so he'd go to his boring job all day and come home and paint these magnificent paintings. Peter Paul Rubens was a fabulous, he was a diplomat. He spoke 7 languages. He was a statesman, but he was also a fantastic artist. This painting, he went to the Ghent Zoo and studied the lions there. And he also went to the menagerie of lions in Ghent in Europe and studied the anatomy. And this painting, if you can imagine, folks, is 9.5 feet high, probably twice your height, and 12 feet long. But he just loved doing these kind of outrageous, and here's another one, outrageous, magnificent paintings with stories, and just really huge, magnificent. It's a wonder he had the time to do it all running around Europe. Now this guy is an American, and he did a kind of work called trompe l'oeil, which means, I can't pronounce it right, it's a French word, trompe l'oeil, and it means fool the eye. So this painting is a very, very realistic painting. And remember, they didn't have photo, he wasn't using photography. And when he had a show at one point, they had to put a guard next to this piece so people wouldn't come up and touch it. So he did all these kind of incredibly realistic, actually these are still lifes. Remember we talked earlier about still lifes. So these are very structured. He would set them up exactly the way he wanted them and paint them. And of course we do have a portrait in here, but he was mainly famous for his still lifes. Now this I'm showing you just because there were so few women early on. This was a Dutch woman who was also a teacher. And here she is painting herself, which is a self-portrait. And then you see she was a little like Frans Hals. Her people are merry and happy and cheerful. And she was famous for that. And she was one of the few women in the, I think it was the 18th century, who was actually a teacher of art. And George Bellows was an American. He was a member of what they call the Ashcan School in the early 20th century. And he liked sports. This is called, both members of the club painted in 1909. And he liked to do city scenes and street life and boxing. So, and you see up here, remember I discussed before how people will do, sometimes preliminary drawings are the same thing in a different way. In the upper left, you'll see first he did a lithograph, which is kind of a print. Then he did it a little bit different. You can see the guy's head is turned, those two in the upper left. And he did it in color. And then in the lower part of this, you'll see the kind of street scenes that New York was like around the 1910s and 1920s. And this is George Bellows. Thomas Eakins was another American artist. And he did, this is a very famous picture of him, of his, called The Biglin Brothers Racing. And he did all sorts of, he did sports, he did portraits. That's his wife in the upper right there. He was a famous American artist. And now, this is a painting. This is one of Rubens that I didn't show you. And I wanted to show you the detail. This is called Dr. Gross's, the guy is Dr. Gross in there, and he is doing a detail of the hand, you see. So this just shows you how in these giant paintings, everything is paid attention to. Now we're going to talk about my very favorite painter, Edward Hopper. Here's a painting he did, I did in the book, but it's very unusual for him because most of his paintings were darker. They were, a lot of times they were about being alone or being solitary in the city. This is New York. Down on the bottom is Nighthawks. It's a very, very famous painting of a coffee shop late at night. In the upper left, I love the shadow cast by the street pole. And these, again, are people kind of isolated. And the one in the bottom there is actually in the Museum of Modern Art, and it's one of my all-time favorite paintings. The idea of the 1950s or 60s, you're traveling and you come upon the rare gas station, kind of isolated. So he's like my personal favorite artist. Again, you see this kind of isolation and solitariness in a way, just a moment in time. So each artist has their own style. All of the people that I've shown you are realists, they're representational artists, but they just chose to paint whatever they wanted to paint and interested them. So you can do the same thing. Think about what you love. Do you like cars? Do you like the city? Do you like dogs? Do you like horses? Do you like food? You can paint whatever you want. And if you care about it and paint it enough, you will paint it through your own way of seeing, your own kind of what they call sensibility. So there's no right or wrong, although we can have favorites. Every artist has their personal way of seeing. And a lot of times it does not have to be perfect, by the way, which is another whole lecture. It just has to be true to your own taste and what you want to do. So where do I make my books? Real briefly, I'll show you. This is my studio when it's cleaned up, which is not now. There I am doing one of my books. First I do it in black and white, then I paint it. And then that's the most fun part. Here I am working on a huge maze. It took 3 months to do the ink work and 3 months to paint it in for an app. Here I'm doing some preliminary sketches for my one of my books. This is the sitting area in my studio, the oil painting area. And this is the view from the top of my studio, the top of the building, where I have, you can see the Empire State Building. Then that green is the East River. And I live 2 blocks from the Empire State Building, and I can walk all the way up and go across that bridge, the 59th Street Bridge, to my studio. Or I can take a ferry, which I did today, or it can take a subway. So thanks a lot, and you can check out my website. And now I'm going to get off screen sharing here, and we're going to see if there are any questions.
So Samuel wants to know, hey, what about Picasso?
Well, first of all, you'll notice almost none of the examples in the books are beyond about 1920. That is because it's a copyright issue. And it's kind of complicated to explain, but you have to go to the exact museum and pay money and write letters, and it's a very illegal thing to be able to use the artwork of artists that are either still alive or have only been dead a short time. While anything before about, it's called copyright, and anything before about 1925, before that, is now available and we can all do it, all use it. And so that's why there are very few abstract artists and modern artists in that particular book. Okay.
So one of the students wants to know, when did you start painting? What year?
Well, I'd rather tell you how old I was. I was actually 6. I was 6 years old, and there was a countywide contest, and I was in the 1st grade, and I drew a picture of a still life with apples and oranges and a banana. And I figured out how to make things shadowed, where you curve, where you can make things, which the woman before us was talking about the mountains. You make one side light and one side dark. And I did that, and wow, I got 1st prize in the county, and my photograph was in the front page of the local newspaper, and I was like, I think I'll be an artist. So I was just a little kid artist.
Tressa wants to know, what is your favorite painting?
My favorite painting, in the whole world, well, I showed you my 2 favorite artists. That would be Van Gogh, the first one with the bright, strong colors and the brush strokes. And my second favorite would be Edward Hopper, which is coincidentally, and this is not on purpose, the last one I showed, which showed the streets in New York and the people and a kind of moody feeling. So those 2.
Okay. Noah wants to know if you've ever visited the Barnes collection in Philadelphia.
That is a superb question. I wish he hadn't asked it, because I'm ashamed to say that I haven't. I've been invited. I've been to the Louvre in Paris. I've been to the Amsterdam. I've been to the London. I've been to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. I've been all over everywhere. Denver. I've never been to the Barnes collection. So if you've been there, you have one up on me. I know it has fabulous art.
Can you tell us the names of any of the books that you've written?
Well, Masterpiece Mix that was a book I wrote a couple years ago, and I have a new book that just came out yesterday, people. It's called Dive In. It's about coral reefs. If you go to my website, you can see pictures and videos, and there are even pictures you can print out free and color in the fish. You can print out this picture, the one that I showed you of Masterpiece Mix. You can print that out, that city picture, in black and white, and color your own pictures in on that. So
how many paintings have you done this year so far?
Oh, this year. Well, let's remember, folks, it's only April. It's the beginning of April. So I'm in the middle of painting a new book called, it's about the rainforest. And there are about 20 paintings, and I've done about 10 finished and about 8 or 9 partially finished. And that's a book. FYI, kids, it takes about a year for me to do a book. First, I have to write it and research it, because I don't know all this stuff. I got to learn about it. I have to go to museums and libraries, get books, learn about it, write the book, do a dummy, which is like a pretend book, and then start the painting. And it usually takes about 6, the shortest book I've ever done was about 6 or 8 months, and the longest is about a year.
Samuel wants to know the name of the rainforest book.
Samuel, good question, because we haven't gotten a name yet. We're trying to figure out a cute name. You email me, go on my website and email me with your parents' email or permission if you can think of a name. The book just before that, which is Dive In, was about coral reefs, and we did not have a name. It's like trying to name a baby before, you know, we did not have a name for that book until the last minute. We were going to call it, you know, we didn't want to call it Coral Reefs. That's too boring. And finally, a friend of mine I was having coffee with, who was a diver, said, call it Dive In. And I'm like, yes, we have a name. So if anyone comes up with a really good name for rainforest, email it to me. It's, by the way, it's the Amazon rainforest. So it can't have orangutans in it or elephants. It has to have, if you use animal names, like I was thinking something like, you know, jaguars, monkeys, and so. But you have to make sure they're in the Amazon rainforest, not in the African rainforest or the Hawaiian rainforest or somewhere else. Has to be in the Amazon rainforest. Okay.
Okay. Well, before we end, I want you to put up that slide again with your website address and your email address.
Okay. Can you see that? No, I share.
No.
Okay, let me just send that. Okay. Let me see. Now I have to get you back. There you are. Okay, screen share. There we go. Share. So is that it? You see it now?
We see your website. Yep.
Check out my website at roxiemunro.com. And you can get my email on that very, very easily. Just go to Contact Roxie, or you could go to Roxie's Studio at Gmail, which is ROXIESS, 2 S's, TUDIO. The website's a good way to get there, actually.
RoxieStudio.com.
No, RoxieMunro.com is RoxieMunro.com is the website. Just my name, RoxieMunro.com website. The email is Roxie's Studio at Gmail.
Gotcha.
ROXIESSTUDIO at Gmail.
Okay. I just put that in the chat
Very
for
good.
everybody.
Perfect.
I got one last question for you. Lindsay wants to know how many books you've written.
I have written and illustrated well over 40, and I've actually lost count because I also have a series of kind of fold-out books that are really cute. So I don't know whether to count them as 1 book or 9 books. Anyhow, let's say 40 to 43, 45 books. And keep in mind, yeah, over a period of years.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Roxie. This was very enlightening.
Well, thank you very much, and goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, students. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Our first program is going to be about Jamestown. We'll be going back in time tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Bye-bye.